The Electoral Commission in Madagascar to announce presidential runoff election results. Former Egyptian President Hosni Mubarak called to testify against his successor Mohamed Morsi. And Nigeria's army chief visits troops that were ambushed by Boko Haram. Hello and thank you for joining us on Africa Live. I am Peninah Karibe. Also coming up this hour. In business, US stocks record the highest daily gain record. And in sports, 8-year-old Nikita Smith breaks mill dominance in motorsports in South Africa. Madagascar's Independent National Election Commission is due to announce full provisional results this Thursday following last week's presidential election runoff. Results published on Wednesday morning from 99.32% of polling stations indicate that Andry Rajoelina won with over 2.5 million votes or 55.57%, while Mark Ravalomanana garnered just over 2 million votes or 44.43%. After Thursday's announcement, the country's High Constitutional Court will have another 8 days to determine whether they agree with the provisional results, and their final decision will be made before January 4th, 2019. It's the first time the two candidates have faced each other at the ballot box, but their rivalry has dominated life on the island for years. Here's a look at their profiles. Both former mayors, both former presidents, both self-made, both incredibly wealthy. But the history between these two is a bitter one. Mark Ravalomanana was forced from power in 2009 and forced into exile following a coup led by Andry Rajoelina. Their standoff cast Madagascar into political and economic turmoil, and the two were banned from running in the 2013 election thanks to pressure from the international community. 5 years on, this election shows they have lost little of their popular support, nor has their relationship improved. Ravalomanana has cast Rajoelina as a destroyer. Rajoelina has dismissed Ravalomanana as too old to revive Madagascar. Both have pitched big plans should they win. Rajoelina's promises include solar power for every home on the island and to have cow theft, one of Madagascar's priority crimes. Ravalomanana is promising free education up to 16 years and universal healthcare. They both know their electorate, the electorate know them. Voters are hoping not just that the winner can deliver, but that the loser can accept the results. Peninah Karibe, CGTN in Nairobi, Kenya. The International Conference on Great Lakes Region, ICGLR, and the Southern African Development Commission have expressed their concerns over the violence and delays in the Democratic Republic of Congo elections. The regional governing blocs are expected to meet DRC's President Joseph Kabila this Thursday in a bid to ensure a stable electoral process. Leon Senyange has more.
Wednesday's meeting by the regional organizations called on the DRC government to hold a peaceful and transparent election. Delegates from the ICGLR and SADC were hosted in the Congo-Brazzaville by President Denis Sassou Nguesso. The meeting also included presidents of Namibia, Angola, Zambia and Botswana. The DRC was not represented. The heads of state expressed their concerns over the violent acts that have marked the election campaign. A delegation composed of Congolese and Zambian foreign ministers will now meet in Kinshasa to discuss further with President Kabila about the election scheduled for December the 30th. Over 40 million Congolese are expected to go to the polls this Sunday. The leading candidates are ruling parties Emmanuel Ramazani Shadari and the opposition's Martin Fayulu as well as Felix Tshisekedi. The electoral body will announce presidential results on January the 15th. Leon Senyange, CGTN, Kinshasa, Democratic Republic of Congo.
Earlier, the electoral body in the DRC announced polling will be postponed until March in the Ebola-hit parts of the country. The decision will affect 3 major towns.
The Electoral Commission said in a statement that elections in the North Kivu province will be held in March 2019. The affected areas include Beni and Butembo in the east and Yumbi in the western part of the country. Close to 1 million people will be affected by the delay.
The elections should be held on the same day across the country. It's not good to have it on a different day.
Seni should meet with all presidential candidates and agree about postponing the elections. We should all be able to vote on the May day.
The electoral body has, however, cited Ebola and ethnic violence for the delay. Since August this year, there have been over 500 Ebola cases reported in eastern DRC. More than 300 people have been confirmed dead. The electoral body here says that even the threat of insecurity has made delivering voting equipment difficult. More than 40 million people are still expected to go to the polls for Sunday's vote. The leading candidates are ruling parties Emmanuel Ramazani Shadari and the opposition's Martin Fayulu and Felix Tshisekedi. The electoral body will announce presidential results on January the 15th. Leon Sanyange, CGTN, Kinshasa, Democratic Republic of Congo.
In Egypt, the retrial of former President Mohamed Morsi for breaking out of prison in 2011 has once again become a heated topic in the country. Morsi's predecessor, President Hosni Mubarak, has been called to testify against him. The Muslim Brotherhood has been accused of resorting to foreign militants to assist their flee. Here's Adel Mahri with more.
The Egyptian judiciary is seeing a historic trial that includes two former Egyptian presidents. This time, however, former President Hosni Mubarak is testifying against former President Mohamed Morsi.
Egypt's longtime ruler Hosni Mubarak enters court for the first time without any charges filed against him. The court has summoned Mubarak to verify reports that foreign armed militants breached the Egyptian border with Gaza in 2011 to break the Muslim Brotherhood leaders out of prison.
On 29th January 2011, the Chief of Intelligence Omar Suleiman told me that some 800 armed militants sneaked from Gaza into the tunnel. They attacked the borders, police stations and checkpoints. They reached Tahrir Square, where they went over the buildings to attack the protesters in Tahrir Square, and reached all the way to Wadi Natron prison, where they broke out members of the Muslim Brotherhood, Hamas and Hezbollah.
With this testimony, Mubarak has pushed away all accusations that police snipers attacked the protesters in 2011. During the 25th of January uprising, the Egyptian police arrested a number of Muslim Brotherhood members and held them in Wadi el-Natron prison, among them Mohamed Morsi, who then became Egypt's elected president. The clash between Mubarak and the Brotherhood became more evident when the judge gave room for Mohammed el-Biltagi, one of the defendants, to ask Mubarak questions.
Was the armed forces able to secure the country and detect the influx of 800 foreign militants, as you claimed? They reached the Natron prison 600 kilometers away and fled out of the country without being arrested. Were you not aware?
This is not true. The armed forces only have the border control troops. After they crossed the border through the tunnels and blended with the society, they did what they did. They clearly had no power beyond the border.
Mubarak refused to comment on a possible plot between the Muslim Brotherhood and other countries to conspire against Egypt. He also didn't talk about other attacks that these foreign militants made. He insisted that he needs permission from the presidency and the armed forces, as the information he has was classified.
After giving the room for Muslim Brotherhood members to ask former President Hosni Mubarak questions, the trial went from investigating fleeing out of prison to a trial about the authenticity of the 2011 January uprising. Adel Mahri, CGTN, Cairo.
The chief of the Nigerian Army, Lieutenant General Tukur Buratai, has paid a visit to troops in the northeastern region that were ambushed by Boko Haram militants early in the week. 13 people died as a result. A statement from the army said the attackers ambushed a military convoy on a highway linking the capital of Borno State with Damaturu in neighboring Yobe State. The attack followed an attempted raid on a nearby military base along the highway that was repelled by the troops. The Maiduguri-Damaturu highway has seen repeated attacks, including raids on military bases and markets. So far, the 9-year-long Boko Haram insurgency has killed 27,000 people, displaced 2 million more, and heightened tensions in the region.
The number of casualties that normally occur in this circumstance or in the first scenario are normally very high, because by the time you jump out from your trench, you will discover that you are exposed. You are completely exposed and you become an easy target.
You're watching Africa Live. Let's take a quick break. Coming up, US President Donald Trump makes a surprise visit to troops in Iraq. And a look at some of the people who made news from the continent this year. We look at Ethiopia's Abiy Ahmed.
How will your world change today? What happens here? What happens there? Or what you make happen for yourself. If it matters to you, it matters to us too. Your stories are the stories that need to be told. Africa Live. Find your voice.
There's more to this place than just glorious landscapes. There's more to it than just, say, Table Mountain or glorious, endless salt flats. There's more to it than countries that are home to some of the deepest mines in the world. There is so much more to this place, even if it is home to some of the finest diamonds on the planet. It is the sheer diversity of the people who call Southern Africa home, and the relentless drive to make it a better place that make it so special. And we know that because this too is home. No one knows Southern Africa like we do. CGTN. See the difference.
My home country lies at the foot of Africa, the southernmost tip of our beautiful continent, and the unique point at which two great oceans meet. Now, on a clear day in Cape Town, you can just make out Robben Island, the place where Nelson Mandela was jailed for so long. South Africa has changed so much in the years since then, but it is this country's history that shaped me and took me into reporting. I'm inspired by Africa's men and women of courage. It's the everyday hero who brings out my passion. The creators, the decision makers, the risk takers who are shaping a bright African future. I see them in Cape Town. I see them in the pulsating city of Johannesburg. I see them across the continent, and I know our time has come.
CGTN is a platform where African voices can speak for themselves and take their stories to the world. My name is Lindy Mtongana, and I'm a news anchor and reporter for CGTN.
US President Donald Trump has made a surprise visit to American troops in Iraq with First Lady Melania Trump. This was Trump's first trip to a conflict zone in nearly 2 years of his presidency. His visit has angered Iraqi politicians who termed it a violation of the country's sovereignty.
The U.S. president posing for selfies with troops at the joint base al-Assad west of Baghdad, smiling for the cameras after orchestrating a major military shakeup in Washington. His address was to the U.S. troops, but his message was directed at the world at large.
America shouldn't be doing the fighting for every nation on earth, not being reimbursed in many cases at all. So we're not the suckers of the world. We're no longer the suckers, folks. We've been fighting for a long time in Syria. Now it's time for our troops to come back home.
The visit comes just days after Trump announced a sudden withdrawal of 2,000 U.S. troops from Syria. At the military base, Trump strongly defended his Syria pullout while promising to stay put in Iraq.
While maintaining the U.S. presence in Iraq to prevent an ISIS resurgence and to protect U.S. interests, and also to always watch very closely over any potential reformation of ISIS, and also to watch over Iran. We'll be watching.
But Iraqi opposition leaders were not too pleased about the U.S. president's visit, reminding him that the U.S. occupation of Iraq ended long ago. In fact, Trump did not meet any Iraqi officials during his 3-hour visit. A planned meeting with Iraqi Prime Minister Adel Abdul Mahdi was scrapped due to a dispute over the venue of the discussions. So the two leaders spoke instead on the phone. Donald Trump ran for the presidency, promising an end to nearly 2 decades of American military interventions. But the U.S. still has significant presence in a number of global war zones. There are around 14,000 U.S. troops in Afghanistan, 5,000 in Iraq, 800 troops in Niger, 500 in Somalia, and an undisclosed number in Libya and Yemen. Although the Trump administration is planning to withdraw around 7,000 troops from Afghanistan, many analysts question Trump's decision to leave U.S.-initiated wars midway. Despite being a major player in the Syrian war not so long ago, Trump says reconstruction of the war-torn country isn't America's problem.
We're not nation building. Rebuilding Syria will require a political solution. And it's a solution that should be paid for by its very rich neighboring countries, not the United States.
Till now, Trump's Middle East policy has focused on cornering Iran by imposing economic sanctions. But by pulling out, experts believe the U.S. has handed out a free pass to Iran in Syria. So what really is America's endgame in the region? Or is it just about Trump's gut, after all? With Nyan Seth, Daniel Plafker for CGTN.
A high-level Turkish delegation will visit Russia on Saturday to discuss Syria issues. Among them will be Turkish Foreign Minister Mevlut Cavusoglu, presidential spokesman Ibrahim Kalin, and other senior officials. A Turkish group will also pay a visit to Washington soon. The area in Syria around Manbij is held by Kurdish rebels. A June agreement between Washington and Ankara called for the Kurds to withdraw. Russia has also weighed in, calling for the area to be turned back to the Syrian government. CGTN's Mikhail Bardavid reports.
Turkey has certainly been very active along its borders with Syria over the last couple of days. On Wednesday, another convoy carrying military vehicles as well as military personnel came through Gaziantep's railway station to reach the Syrian border. Meanwhile, a U.S. delegation is expected to visit Ankara this week to discuss the withdrawal of American troops from Syria. That decision had been welcomed and partly triggered by Turkey, as Turkish President Recep Tayyip Erdogan has reassured U.S. President Donald Trump that Ankara would finish the fight against ISIL in Syria. During the meetings, Turkey is also expected to stress that the U.S. must take back the weapons it provided the Syrian Kurdish group YPG in the fight against ISIL. Ankara still considers clearing Turkey's border of YPG militants its main priority for a future operation, but Ankara has also emphasized there will be no stepping back in the fight against ISIL. Turkey is also cooperating closely with Russia in the region. Turkish Foreign Minister Mevlut Cavusoglu is expected to meet with Russian officials in the upcoming days, while Turkish President Tayyip Erdogan has announced he intends to meet with Russian President Vladimir Putin to discuss the U.S. decision to pull out from Syria. This is Mikhail Bardavid for CGTN in Istanbul.
Let's take a look at a draft law on foreign investment that's going up for review. The bi-monthly session of the National People's Congress Standing Committee that began Sunday will examine the measure as it works to simplify several processes for foreign investors. CGTN's Huna shows us what that will mean.
China's first unified law aimed at regulating foreign investment. With current laws unable to keep up with the changing economic situation, China strives to build new institutions and open its economy.
It's a clear message that by drafting the law, our country is raising the level of opening up to a new dimension.
The new draft underlines protection of intellectual property rights of foreign investors and foreign companies. It also encourages voluntary technological cooperation based on business rules. It says conditions of technological cooperation concerning foreign investment should be decided by all parties of investment through negotiation, while government departments and officials cannot use administrative means for forced technology transfers.
During the discussion, many lawmakers say that the foreign investment law is meant to promote and protect foreign investment in China to boost their confidence in the Chinese market. But other lawmakers suggest that some measures need to be put in place to ensure fair trade.
Zheng Gongcheng of the NPC Standing Committee suggests the draft should make clear the legal responsibilities of foreign companies in several categories.
To ensure fair competition in the market, we need to have more specific measures to regulate foreign companies in areas like environment, labor, and the utilization of land resources.
China has adopted a foreign investment administration model of pre-establishment national treatment plus a negative list. As part of its efforts to further open up, the country unveiled a shortened negative list for foreign investment in June, cutting the number of items from 63 to 48 and removing access restrictions in various sectors.
I hope the top legislature can hear more voices from us Hong Kong business people when drafting the law.
Once adopted, the unified law will replace 3 existing laws. Lawmakers will not pass the draft this time. It now needs review at least 3 times by the top legislature before it's passed. So discussions will continue, and more details will be debated by the lawmakers. Hona, CGTN, Beijing.
Meanwhile, new laws taking effect in China in 2019 may impact imported and domestic products. Measures set to level the playing field between Chinese companies and foreign ones that invest in China are aimed at improving foreign trade. CGTN's Shui Hueyo shows us what that will mean.
John Ruhambiza is a Tanzanian businessman working in Guangzhou. Since 2015, his company has been exporting a Tanzanian agro product called cassava to China. Ruhambiza also served as chairman of Tanzania's Chamber of Commerce in China. He says many Tanzanian investors are looking forward to China's new proposed law on foreign investment.
We used to be buying very much from China. There's a kind of trade imbalance, but now we are also going to be selling to the big market of China. In that way, we are going to kind of balance the trade, and also our people are going to benefit.
Ruhambiza says the proposed law will make market access easier for Tanzanian companies, opening doors to the country's soybeans and cashews. American companies also see it as a great move. Holly Saidin, the president of the American Chamber of Commerce in South China, says the new legislation signals a change in focus from management to protection of foreign investment, especially with both protection of technology and intellectual property rights being written into the draft law.
It will encourage them to bring additional technology in China, which at this point they've been hesitant to do. They will increase their investments in China. It will help China open up more.
Saidin says the legislation is a good initiative as it would establish equal footing for foreign businesses and create a level playing field where everyone can participate, but only under the condition that the law is enforced.
One of the things that we've suggested, and we hope that will be considered, is setting up a vehicle where foreign companies' issues and complaints can be channeled above the level of the local governments to a level where they cannot be influenced by the local government courts and local ability.
At the end of this November, a total of 950,000 foreign-funded companies became registered in China. They altogether brought in more than $2 trillion, performing as a major driving force in China's rapid development. And to continue this momentum, protection of foreign companies becomes more crucial than ever. Tuhe Al CGTN, Guangzhou.
Abiy Ahmed was sworn in as Ethiopia's Prime Minister in April. Since then, the 41-year-old leader has undertaken reforms that have quickly changed the country, earning him a place among newsmakers in 2018.
In April, Abiy Ahmed became the first member of the Oromo ethnic group, one of the largest ethnic groups in Ethiopia, to head Ethiopia's government. His predecessor, Haile Mariam Desalegn, stepped down after 3 years of protests and unrest. The ruling coalition then settled on Abiy as Prime Minister, heralding a wave of change.
So why should Abiy Ahmed be considered among remarkable people in 2018? Well, the pace of change in Ethiopia since he took over as Prime Minister in April has been so fast that it is almost like looking at a different country.
In the roughly 8-month period since his ascension to power, Abiy has freed thousands of political detainees, lifted the state of emergency earlier than scheduled, and handled disputed territory to Eritrea. He also declared the end of the war between the two countries. Tears flowed as families separated by the Ethiopia-Eritrea border were reunited after years apart. The first commercial flight between the two countries in 2 decades landed in Eritrea's capital Asmara in July. And in yet another first, Abiy appointed women to half of the ministerial positions.
Ethiopia's Prime Minister has shown himself as an astute politician with impressive military and academic credentials, so that a section of the members of the opposition are now cautiously optimistic about the future of Ethiopia under him.
Abiy has served as a soldier, an intelligence officer, and the Minister for Science. He has a doctorate degree in peace and security issues, as well as a master's degree in transformational leadership from the University of Greenwich in London. With this, he is intent on putting Ethiopia on a new path. But critics argue that Abiy has gone big on grand gestures, yet failed to establish the institutional changes needed to create a meaningful democracy. However, just 8 months into his reign, it can't be denied that Ethiopia has transformed, and the man responsible for these changes is its youthful Prime Minister. Bulkisa Nyabwa, CGTN, Nairobi, Kenya.
You don't find the stories of North Africa by sitting on the sidelines. You've got to get out, go there, and you'll find them. In the bazaars of Casablanca, among the crowds in Cairo,
who come to visit Cairo, the ancient capital of Egypt.
Along the waters of the Nile, along the sands of the Sahara. No one else will take you where we can in North Africa. No one else will show you what it's all about. CGTN, see the difference.
You're watching breaking news on CGTN.
A recap of the headlines at this Madagascar's Independent National Election Commission is due to announce full provisional results this Thursday following last week's presidential election runoff. Results published on Wednesday morning from 99.32% of polling stations indicate that Andry Rajoelina won with over 2.5 million votes or 55.57%, while Peninah garnered just over 2 million votes or 44.43%. In the Democratic Republic of Congo, the electoral body has announced polling will be postponed until March in the Ebola-hit parts of the country. The decision will affect 3 major towns. In Egypt, the retrial of former President Mohamed Morsi for breaking out of prison in 2011 has once again become a heated topic in the country. Morsi's predecessor, President Hosni Mubarak, has been called to testify against him. The Muslim Brotherhood has been accused of resorting to foreign militants to assist their flee. And US President Donald Trump has made a surprise visit to American troops in Iraq with First Lady Melania Trump. This was Trump's first trip to a conflict zone in nearly 2 years of his presidency. His visit has angered Iraqi politicians who termed it a violation of the country's sovereignty. And that's a look at our top stories this hour. Coming up in business news, US stocks record the highest daily gain on record, and stocks in China to rebound in 2019.
Accra is my kind of city. That's because when I'm here, I feel like I'm back home in Lagos or Abidjan, which are 2 of the major cities I grew up in.
See, business in Africa is high risk.
After about a decade covering business news on the continent, I've learned it's all about the high risk, but also the high returns and the high energy. You simply have to adjust in order to keep pace. When I started out as a journalist, my dream was to open people's minds to the different perspectives. From the CEO in the boardroom to the trader out in the street, we all have different stories. From Accra to Addis Ababa, from Cairo to Cape Town, and I wouldn't have it any other way. Here at CGTN, we realize that Africa is on the move, and it's moving fast, but we're moving right along with it. I'm Ucheo Koronkwo, and I'm a business anchor and reporter at CGTN.
The Dow Jones Industrial Average in the U.S. surged at least 1,000 points in a single session for the first time in a broad stock rebound on Wednesday. This also saw the S&P 500 post its biggest one-day percentage gain in more than 9 years after the benchmark index was on the brink of a bear market. The Dow Jones Industrial Average rose over 1,000 points or 4.99% to 22,878.65. The S&P 500 gained 116.63 points or 4.96%, while the Nasdaq Composite added 361.44 points or 5.84%.
The market now, first of all, is just exhausted from all the headlines in Washington, and I think also a bit exhausted from all the tax law selling that we've seen over the course of December. So hopefully this is the beginning of a stabilization process, with markets saying, okay, we've priced in enough uncertainty and enough tax law selling that we're pretty good through the end of the year.
The S&P 500 index was on pace for its biggest percentage decline in December since the Great Depression, despite Wednesday's surge. But just a few months ago, reports were saying that the American stock market had ushered in the longest bull market ever, more than 3,000 days. As CGTN's John Terra wraps up, 2018 has been a volatile year.
Meet our guide to US stock prices in 2018. Not very talkative, I grant you, but packed with information nonetheless. It's one of the digital big boards on the trading floor of the New York Stock Exchange.
Take a look at the big board, and on the right-hand side, in red, you see VIX. That's the volatility index, or the fear index. And there's been a lot of fear in 2018.
Broker Peter Tuchman, who, unlike the big board, is very talkative, explains why.
3 most important, and I think the first one to rattle the market, were the problems with China trade, China tariffs, and the sort of incoherent policy coming out of Washington. Next, we've seen recently the possibility of a global slowdown, which is sort of a little bit out of my wheelhouse, but it's clearly something the market is paying attention to. And then I think the most important thing is interest rates. Historically, interest rate raises have been one of the biggest things to affect the market on a quarterly basis, so it's something we have to keep our eye on.
There have been some extraordinary gyrations in US stock values this year. Swings of 500 points or more from red to green and back again or the other way around have been common. In the closing weeks of 2018, it was said you'd have to go back to 1931, 87 years, to find a worse December for the S&P 500.
At some point in the year, almost every sector has been beaten up, from the banks to the retailers to the healthcare to the transports to the housing. But there is one sector the big board is telling us was particularly badly hit with the volatility of 2018, and that is the FANG, the big tech stocks that only a year ago were rising so fast.
Santosh Rao monitors FANG stocks, Facebook, Apple, Amazon, Netflix and Google, for a living. He says they're on track to end the year far lower than they began.
The FANG stocks are highly volatile, and this is a highly volatile market. So it's very logical that they pull back. And besides that, they have some company-specific issues. Facebook has some privacy issues. Apple has some iPhone issues.
Of course, nothing takes away from the fact that 3 giant US companies briefly hit $1 trillion in value this year. Apple, Amazon and Microsoft all had market cap valuations bigger than some small countries in 2018. So what may happen in 2019? Peter Tuchman, who's worked at the New York Stock Exchange for over 30 years, says too many unknowns make predictions tough, especially regarding the Trump White House.
So what's going to happen next year? Well, so is this administration done? Are we going to continue the indictments and the attack on what's going on there? And how is that going to affect the markets? That's an unknown. That's a wild card, right? I think our economy, is it going to slow down? I don't kind of get a sense of that. Are they going to pause on the interest rate raises as aggressively as they've been? Probably. What's going to happen with China? I think that will work itself out as long as we don't keep pressing on the gas and the brake at the same time with our policy decisions.
Whatever happens in 2019, it'll be reflected by the numbers in green or red high on the wall of the trading floor. John Terrett, CGTN, at the New York Stock Exchange.
Chinese stocks suffered from a bearish year in 2018, but a Goldman Sachs report says that China's share market has already reached its bottom and will likely rebound next year. The investment bank based its report on its conclusion that investors already have priced in the worst scenario of China's 2019 economic outlook. The average price-earnings ratio of companies listed on the Shanghai and Shenzhen stock exchanges is at about 10. That's much lower than the long-term average. Analysts say that indicates the underestimated share prices and ample room for a rally should any good news hit the market. Here in Africa, moving west to Senegal, and Chinese businessmen have been in the country to explore investment opportunities. This visit is part of the economic cooperation between the Chinese and Senegalese private sectors.
Chinese entrepreneurs, alongside a delegation from the Ministry of Commerce of China, are exploring investment opportunities offered by the Senegalese infrastructure sector. This visit was made possible thanks to the strong cooperation between the two countries.
Cooperation between China and Senegal in the infrastructure sector offers very good prospects. Senegal needs to invest in infrastructure to ensure the foundations for its development. Chinese companies are willing to strengthen their cooperation with Senegalese companies to increase the level of infrastructure construction. In China, it's often said that to develop, you first need roads. Once we have developed corporations in the field of infrastructure, all other sectors will follow suit.
In recent years, cooperation between China and Senegal has rapidly increased. Senegalese authorities often highlight the many achievements made by China, a key player in its development, especially in the field of road infrastructure.
We have been able to benefit from significant Chinese investments through the Exim Bank of China, which has already financed 2 flagship highway projects, namely the AIBD highway to Thiès. Financed by the Exim Bank of China for $400 million, it departs from the Blaise Diagne International Airport and goes to Thies for one segment, while the other segment goes to Mbour over a distance of 55 kilometers. There is also the other flagship project, the 115-kilometer Thies-Touba Highway, which is the extension of the AIBD highway to Touba and costs $690 million. Thus, in the road sector, the government of Senegal is consistently assisted by the People's Republic of China.
In addition to construction, China also finances sports infrastructure, education, agriculture, telecommunications, and many other sectors in Senegal. Currently ranked 140th in the Doing Business ranking, Senegal has the ambition to be one of the 100 most reform-oriented countries in 2019.
We are ready to work with our Chinese counterparts on promising projects, whether it is energy, transport, infrastructure, industry, or in agro-industrial projects. Opportunities are available and we have a very attractive investment code.
Senegal is set to launch the second phase of its development program called Plan for an Emerging Senegal. With China as an investor, the country is not worried about achieving this ambitious plan for structural transformation of its economy. Asatal, CGTN.
Over to the north of Africa, the president of Egypt has inaugurated the first phase of the country's mega greenhouse project. The project is meant to increase agricultural production to sustain food supply for the fast growing population in the country. CGTN's Yasser Hakim has more details.
The Egyptian government is putting a lot of effort on adopting modern cultivation techniques. Egyptian President Abdel Fattah el-Sisi says his country will soon have the second highest number of greenhouse projects in the world. But why this interest in greenhouses?
It saves 40 to 60% more water than traditional cultivation, and it produces 5 times more than normal farming on the same plot of land. The output is high-quality organic food. It guarantees production all year round, not just seasonally, and it also opens the door for other related industries, such as packaging.
The first phase, inaugurated by the Egyptian president, includes 7,100 greenhouses over 35,000 acres of land. The total project will cover 100,000 acres and should produce 1.5 million tons a year of agricultural products.
Most of the products are vegetables and fruits like tomatoes, cucumber, beans, green pepper and watermelon. The prices of these products in the market will inevitably go down because of the constant supply.
The projects will help make Egypt self-sufficient in several food items, but will also create revenue for the state.
It will increase exports a lot. Now we export 4.1 million tons a year at $4 billion. Imagine the income we will receive when we produce and export 4 times the quantity.
There were some concerns that adopting modern technology would affect the traditional farmer. Farmers constitute a significant segment of the population.
Traditional farmers should develop themselves. They must learn about greenhouses because it will increase their production by 5 times on the same area of land with lower water consumption. So with less expenses and less effort, they will make more profits. The traditional farmer will benefit if he applies this technology on his land.
Aside from the production value, the first phase of the project alone has also created job opportunities for 75,000 people. China is a major contributor to the greenhouse technology in Egypt. Chinese Peninah Group has cultivated 12,000 acres out of the 35,000 in the first phase, making it the largest foreign investor in this mega project. Yasser Hakim for CGTN, Cairo.
The sharing economy is welcoming a new segment, toys. A father of 4 in Singapore began renting toys to others 3 years ago. His business has been expanding and he's able to generate stable extra income for his family.
Toy stores in Singapore are crowded with kids and parents during the Christmas holidays.
But some analysts say that may not last long since the toy sharing business is getting popular. Hu Wei-Qian, a father with 4 children, has been running a toy sharing platform with his wife for 3 years. They are now earning about 2,000 Singapore dollars or 10,000 yuan every month by loaning toys.
We have grown about 4 times of last year's. So I think that's, you can kind of say that the trend is actually getting higher for people to rent toys from us.
Besides ordinary families with kids, Toy Stripe is also targeting party planners, especially during the holidays. But many parents still have doubts about this idea. One of their major concerns is the hygiene of the constantly shared toys. And traditional toy store owners also agree.
If you are sharing a big toy, because that makes sense to me, like maybe a ride-on or one of these, where you can thoroughly, I suppose, scrub it clean with soap. But the small little ones that go in the mouth, I really don't think so.
The global toy market will reach revenues of more than 120 billion US dollars by 2023, and that is according to a forecast from market research company Report Buyer. However, analysts say it will take some time before brick-and-mortar stores and toy sharing platforms find a way to cooperate instead of fighting over market share. Lulu, CGTN.
You're watching Africa Live. Still ahead after the break. Surrogacy in Nigeria gains popularity, but few people will openly talk about it.
When you look at Africa, what do you really see? Do you see fast-growing, endless deserts and parched earth? Or do you see the biggest opportunity for an agricultural revolution in a generation? Do you see crowded, unplanned cities or vast, untapped markets? Do you see a population risk, or do you see a billion-strong opportunity to grow the next wave of multi-billion-dollar firms in Africa? When you look at Africa, what do you really see? Join us in Global Business and see Africa through our eyes.
Social and religious pressure forces many infertile couples to seek ways to avoid the social's judgment. Surrogacy is one way out. It is gaining popularity for many Nigerian couples, but the lack of legislation leaves parents and the surrogate vulnerable and open to exploitation. After experiencing fertility challenges, an activist decided to set up an agency in Lagos to help other couples struggling to conceive by using surrogate mothers in Nigeria.
Every morning, Toyin Lolo gets her children ready for school. They are like any other children, except they were born with the help of a surrogate mother in India. Toyin's 12-year struggle with uterine fibroids led her to turn to surrogacy.
Surrogacy is in Nigeria, and once you do it legally, you sign necessary papers, you get a lawyer, you get an agency like ours, we put you through the process. You are safe, and then at the end of the day, when the surrogate gives birth, the hospital hands over the baby to you directly.
In Nigeria, surrogacy is neither authorized nor prohibited, and for Ada, this gap was a rescue. She was given nearly 5,000 euros and accommodation during her pregnancy. At the time, her family was threatened with eviction from their apartment, and it was the only reason her husband accepted the agreement.
I almost gave my life for us to live where we were, because as at that moment, the courts were coming to drive families out of the houses and put their properties on the streets, and I didn't want to even think of that.
In a deeply spiritual and conservative country, infertility is perceived as a divine punishment, and surrogacy is considered taboo and frowned upon, despite existing high demand.
The numbers in the last 2 years have really gone up, and we have not only people who are resident in Nigeria, we have a lot of requests from Europe, Nigerians particularly living in Europe, Nigerians living in the United States.
But not every family has the means to access surrogacy or IVF, and many turn to illegal maternity wards who put unwanted children up for adoption or worse, for sale. Beryl Oro, CGTN.
And coming up in sports, 8-year-old Nikita Smith breaking the male dominance in motorsports in South Africa.
Africa, where champions are made, records are broken, legends are born. We're there for every goal, for every knockout, for every